Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing a GeForce RTX 4090 in Assassin's Creed Shadows. But first, let's go over today's video sponsor, Meze Audio. If you're looking for a premium headset, consider the Meze Audio 105 Air headphones and their boom mic. These open-back headphones are super comfortable, well-built, and very well regarded amongst audiophiles for their superb sound quality. And their boom mic, well, speaks for itself. I'm going to record my voice with it throughout this video, and it rivals way more expensive and bigger microphones, such as my Shure MV7 that I usually utilize. Check them out in the link in the description and use the code PEDROFreeShipping for free shipping. Onto the video now. This is the Asus ROG Strix version of the card. I am running it with the latest Nvidia drivers and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Up's GPU-Z, and over on the left I am pairing it with a Ryzen 7 9800X 3D and 32GB of RAM. Let's get into it, shall we? You know what, guys? The shall we part is actually a very nice test for the microphone. Let me know how that sounds. I am starting at the 4K resolution utilizing Nvidia DLSS set to native AA, so it's DLAA over here, and on the scalability settings I am using everything set to the maximum, including ray tracing, which is what makes the game look like a next-gen title or a current-gen title, you know? If you disable ray tracing or start utilizing like very high settings or high settings instead of these maximum settings, it starts looking last gen, basically. I showed that with the RX 7900 XTX video, and it's not pretty, okay? And the performance jump as well, if you lower down the settings, is not as high as you'd think. It's not as high as other titles for sure, so that's why I prefer to keep everything set to the maximum here, make the game look really pretty, actually. In some lighting situations, it looks pretty beautiful in my opinion, and I prefer to enable like DLSS quality and stuff like that to make it run faster instead of lowering down the settings. Oh, also I forgot, but the DLSS version that we're utilizing here is DLSS4. I went into the Nvidia app over here and overrode it, and now it's using DLSS4. The difference between DLSS3 and DLSS4 DLAA in this title is 1 FPS, so it doesn't really matter. And if you really want the sharpest look out of your game, I suggest you to go into the Nvidia app and enable that DLSS4 transformer model, because it is pretty gorgeous, and it makes it so that DLSS quality, for example, is very similar to native resolution in this one, especially at 4K res, and also DLSS performance ends up being pretty good looking at the same time, so you can utilize that absolutely while having a 4K look-like experience, you know? But anyway, as you can see, yes guys, the 4090 is dropping into the 30s. It's also having some very big frame time spikes here and there, probably because we are running through this city for the first time in this video. But yeah, it's not super stable, it drops FPS, getting down into the 30s. It's not impressive whatsoever, and it's a freaking 4090, the second most powerful GPU in the world. So it's a big shame that if you want to make the game look great, well, this is what's needed. And again, guys, you can lower it down to like very high settings, keep that ray tracing enabled, but it will gain you like 5 FPS. It's not really a big difference whatsoever. It's only when you start lowering the settings and the ray tracing that there's a big difference, but then it starts looking pretty bad, so not gonna do that. 43 on average, it's playable, but it's not what you want coming from an RTX 4090, of course. But hey, once again, we can just enable quality DLSS and make it quite a bit better, I hope. Now, usually you'd see a bit higher FPS when lowering down the resolution and the upscalers and stuff like that, but here in this title there's not as big of a difference as in other titles. Once again, like the scaling in this game is just broken, I guess. But hey, at least we get up into the 60s and 50s, as you can see. Now up into the 70s in this section, 69 right there, very nice indeed, right? Yeah, it's definitely quite a bit better, and it's a good baseline for us to enable frame generation on top of this. Actually, in this title, I found that even with a baseline of 40 frames per second, 40 plus 100% of the time without drops into the 30s, not the same as what we were seeing previously at native resolution, alright? But if you do enable FG over 40 FPS, it is a pretty stable and enjoyable experience still. And in terms of input lag, there is not much input lag. It's not like other titles when you enable frame generation with 40 FPS. It just sucks completely, right? Oh, hello there, Miguel, how's it going? Yes, this is Miguel right here. It's been a long time since we've seen Jack in this game, by the way, but Miguel is also very nice. Good boy, Miguel. Love you too. Alright, the grass looks really good, the vegetation as well, still with quality DLSS. But as I was saying, in this title, you enable DLSS even with less than 60 FPS and it will work really well. So the fact that we can get 65 FPS average at the moment with 57 1% lows, some drops into the 50s of course. Let's see it over here in these bushes. Not a problem, still not dropping, okay. Over here looking this direction it was pretty intensive on the 3050 GPU. It dropped to like 59, yeah, once again 59. Yeah, 57, so definitely a lot more intensive over here in this area, probably because of the bamboo. Good thing is you can actually, come on, can I, please? Okay, you can actually cut down the bamboo and make it less intensive, if you want. Alright? Very nice indeed. But no, nobody will do that. Anyway, it's a much better experience like this than it was at native res, that's for sure, right? But it still drops, and I don't like it to drop from 60 FPS, at least with an RTX 4090, right? So what you can do to make it run basically flawlessly is play with some frame generation. This is 2x frame generation in this game, and it's the latest version of FG as well. So the 1% lows, well, are going to be very crappy if I start counting them, but the gameplay itself, it's really smooth now. Input lag is basically, it's ignorable, you know? You can tell that the input lag might be just a little bit worse than it was before, but I think this is a way superior experience to what we saw previously, okay? So I would highly recommend you to play with some DLSS quality, DLSS4 as well, with the override in Nvidia app, and DLSS frame generation at the same time, because this is the way to experience this title. It's a beautiful one. You don't want to disable ray tracing. You don't want to lower down the settings and make the trees and the grass and stuff like that pop in a lot more. It's going to be super noticeable if you do lower the settings. Actually, it's still very noticeable here with max settings, so imagine if you did disable some of them or lower them down, it would be even worse. But yeah, it works really well like this, it looks great at the same time. I can't notice any artifacting from the frame generation, since we did have 60 FPS previously before we started utilizing FG here, you know. So yeah, it's basically unnoticeable in terms of frame generation artifacting. If you do have the HUD on, which I disabled for this video for cleaner thumbnails, yes. But if you do have the HUD on, the HUD does not have the frame generation, okay? So you can see the icons running at a slower frame rate and slower hertz or whatever. But at the baseline of 50 plus FPS, which is what we were getting, it doesn't really matter. It's only at like 30 baseline or 40 baseline where you start noticing that the icons are a little bit jittery sometimes, but not right here. This is really good. Dropping into the 90s, as you can see. At this point, by the way, YouTube compression is gonna ruin every single detail, but trust me guys, this is really, really impressive in terms of details still. Also, sorry about not counting the FPS, but again, 1% lows are pretty terrible when I do so. I could bring up the Nvidia overlay actually. Latency shows 0 milliseconds. That's a bit of a shame. We can't actually see the latency results here, but trust me, it feels really good. What I can do is show you the 1% lows there on the top right. And yeah, they're very different from MSI Afterburner's 1% lows, 54 compared to 100 plus. And the 1% lows on the Nvidia overlay are the correct ones. It's just because of how the new frame generation works. Okay, I'm back in the city area, and looking at this is a pretty demanding thing for frame generation to handle, and doing a good job, I think. I don't think I can see much weirdness going on over here. Yeah, again, like, the artifacting is pretty minimal, if there is any. There probably is, but I just can't really see it, okay? So that's it for 4K resolution. You could also, of course, lower down the quality of the upscaler, disable the frame generation as well. If you don't like FG and you want 60 plus FPS all of the time, I think this is probably the way to go, right? Still looks good, although a little bit softer than quality DLSS, of course, which looked basically the same as native 4K. This is just slightly softer. You are losing a little bit of detail here and there. And there is also a little bit more pixelation and ghosting or motion blur around vegetation, especially at the distance, like a little bit of a blob, you know. So, not amazing, really, in performance DLSS4, even though it's DLSS4. But it still does a good job, and if you can overlook those little imperfections in the image, you can have that 60 plus FPS experience most of the time with native 60 plus FPS frames. And obviously, if you want to enable the frame generation over this, the DLSS performance stuff, it's still really acceptable in terms of visuals, although you can see that the grass, especially this fast-moving grass, is a little bit destroyed, you know, like it has some noise to it, and it's not amazing. The hair quality is also pretty soft. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, it's a minor little imperfection there on the hair, I guess. But coupled with the noise around vegetation and so on, I don't think I would use this, okay? Quality DLSS with the 4090 is the way to go. It looked really good, and it still was a really smooth experience, even with some drops into like the 90s and 80s maybe, over here. Yeah, it still drops into the 90s with performance DLSS, by the way, plus FG. But again, input lag-wise, it's totally acceptable. It's like they made this game with input lag of frame generation in mind, or with frame generation in mind, basically, and it actually feels really responsive compared to other titles. It's still a shame that the 4090 and even the 5090 require these technologies to be 60 plus FPS all of the time, but it is what it is, my friends. Again, modern gaming. And now let's try it at 1440p resolution using native AA again and no frame generation, same settings here. And given what I know about this game already, I think it's still going to drop from 60 FPS. Alright, so I'm gonna start counting the frames over here, everything is fine, we're getting 60... What am I doing? I want to whistle for the horse, yes, there we go. Come on, Roach, there it is, thank you very much. Okay, it was weird. Right, 70s, 80s, in the middle of nowhere, it's smooth, it's playable, but here in this forest area, it's still going to drop, guys. Yeah, so this is the most disappointing thing about this game. It keeps dropping from 60 FPS in forest areas. Gosh, it's so clunky, man. No matter what resolution you're on. I don't even know. Will it drop at 720p? I'm curious here. Okay, real quick, I just want to check it out with 1280 by 720 resolution. Alright. And no, okay, so the 4090 does have what it takes to handle this, even in forest areas, at 60 plus FPS all of the time. Oh, dropping into the 60s sometimes. My god, Roach, why do you get stuck so often? And it just stops, you know, it doesn't even throw me into the ground like in Red Dead Redemption 2. I'd like that, at least I could move a little bit more. But no, over here you just get stuck like this. Come on, okay. That worked, I just pushed on. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't drop, so the 4090 is not limited by something else. Maybe the RT cores or something like that, maybe the bandwidth. I don't know what it is, but the 4090 doesn't really have a problem with 720p gaming in this one. That's great, you know? I can't believe we got to the point where I'm actually testing 720p in a 4090 and 5070 Ti and 7900 XTX, and those GPUs were dropping from 60 FPS. It's crazy. At 720p, I know, it's crazy. The game is definitely broken. Something in this title is definitely broken, okay? It needs to be fixed ASAP. So this is not going to be the most stable thing here at 1440p resolution. That's a big shame to see. Even like Stalker 2, for example, which also has ray tracing enabled by default in the form of Lumen with UE5. if you max it out at 1440p with the 4090, it will actually play really well, no problems. Also, I want to keep native AA actually and just use DLSS over native because the baseline FPS were good enough for this. So this is going to deliver the best visual fidelity and the best smoothness at 1440p. And I recommend these settings. If you have a 1440p monitor with the RTX 4090, this is definitely the way to go, guys. You can have that high refresh rate experience. Let me bring up the 1% lows there on the top right. What have I done? Oh, there you go. Okay, it's all good. But yeah, this is definitely the way to go. It looks really, really good. Super sharp, super detailed, just slightly softer than native resolution because frame generation always makes things ever so slightly soft, but it's so minimal that I personally don't really care about that difference. It looks native to me. It is actually native resolution, just with those AI generated frames in between, and it works and looks absolutely great. Also, that guy over there looks like a YouTuber who like goes to Omegle, I think, and scares people with his haircut. Yeah. Okay, anyway, moving on. Sometimes I see him in the shorts, you know. We see Jack over here. Hello, buddy Jack. Come over here. I want to pet you. I want to pet you. Come on, stop it. Jack. Jack. Why? Why do you need to run from me every single time in every video? He's really cute, by the way. There's another Jack over here. Oh, the mini Jack. Are you serious? No, and the guy is here again. Where are you going, mini Jack? Come on, buddy. Oh, he's meowing at us. Oh, this is so cute. This is the cutest thing. Look at him. Oh, this is lovely. He's saying that he loves the RTX 4090 and it's one of the best GPUs ever made, at least in recent years. And that's true, my friends. But yeah, this is it. This is how I'd play at 1440p resolution, frame generation on, maximum settings, enjoy that ray tracing, enjoy those visuals. Yeah, it has a lot of detail and it is very smooth like this. Although, again, maybe it should have been like this at native resolution. Maybe if you disabled ray tracing, it shouldn't have looked so bad, because if you do so, I can actually showcase that over here. This is with the ray tracing enabled, this is with the ray tracing disabled. Huge difference, right? That's why with these high-end GPUs, I really emphasize that this is the way to go, in my opinion, in terms of visuals. And you could like tweak a couple of settings over here, but it will only get you like 5-10 more FPS. But anyway, let's disable frame generation right here, and well, I could use quality DLSS here. I don't like it at 1440p. It looks good, not gonna lie, but you can definitely tell the difference between quality DLSS in this one compared to native resolution. Native will be quite a bit better looking and sharper as well in terms of the leaves and so on. So the frame generation is definitely the way to go, in my opinion. Once again, this is all subjective, of course. You could hate frame generation and think that this is definitely the way to go. In that case, it's absolutely fine. Different people will prefer different things, obviously. So I'm here showcasing quality DLSS still because of that. Alright, and as you can see, inside of forest areas with some vegetation and so on, still not dropping, getting us down into like the 70s sometimes, 60s I guess, in worst case scenario, but at least if you enable the DLSS quality at 1440p, it won't drop your FPS from 60 frames, even in these bushy areas. Also, guys, just gonna mention this about the headphones. These are very comfy. Wait, these are very comfy, but they are very hot. You can see that my ears are really red at the moment. So if you live in hot places, keep that in mind. It's really nice. I love the feel, but I am starting to get hot. Maybe because the GPU is also consuming a lot of power. Anyway, we're playing at 1080p resolution now. I'm gonna disable the DLSS over here. And no frame generation. Max settings over here again. Let's do this. 1080p. And yes, this is 1080p, guys. It gets pretty much the same FPS as quality DLSS did at 1440p. So that means that it'll likely not drop from 60 FPS, but you can never be sure here in this title. So I'm actually gonna go there to the other place, the other big forest where it drops the most. over here, not too bad actually. 80s, 61, 1% lows with those couple of stutters there. Power utilization on the GPU is a lot lower right now. That's something that we've been seeing in this particular title a lot recently. Although with the 7900 XTX, it was still in the upper 300 watt range, closing in on 400 watts, even at 720p. With the same performance as the 5070 Ti, but the 5070 Ti was dropping a lot in power utilization. Maybe it was over here actually. Yeah, as you can see in forest areas, things start being utilized a lot more. GPU power usage 350 watts, 360 sometimes. Yep, pretty intensive stuff, but hey, at least at 1080p native resolution, a 4090 is capable of running it natively. It's a breath of fresh air, kind of. Especially after seeing that 5070 Ti again and 7900 XTX dropping from 60 at 720p. I just can't even wrap my mind about it still. But yeah guys, that's about it. At 1080p resolution, the FPS are so close to 60 that I would still enable frame generation here for a smoother experience with basically the same visuals. And now we're getting up into the 120s, 140s in this particular area where we were getting like 80 frames per second or 70 frames per second. So yeah, much better, much smoother experience here with the FG enabled at 1080p resolution as well. And again, this is just one of those recent titles that's so intensive that you gotta rely on frame generation. Thankfully though, the FG implementation is really good. But yeah, that's about it for this one. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one very soon. Also, thanks to Meze Audio for sponsoring this video and sending these awesome headphones. And I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.